sometimes one just isn't enough. What you're seeing right now is called streaming, and you're watching Zudineta do it. Why her? Well, take a look at her hand. You should notice that her thumb is wiggling. What's up with that? Before you think I'm crazy for making this video, you're not wrong. But really, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Just for this video, I've conducted a survey asking Oz players about the anatomy of their hands. I've questioned top players. I've talked with tapping experts. I've collected, watched, and analyzed so much handcam footage. And I even read studies to prepare for making this video. This video is going to be very out there. I can't promise that it's going to be of any significant value, to be honest. That this is just me going balls deep into a random thing that caught my attention. But I can promise you this. This is uncharted territory. There's going to be something new for you.
I'm getting Squashy Boy vibes.
So let's get started.
from
First,
this.
Zudi is obviously not the only one who does this. She just has the most severe case of thumb wiggling I've seen so far. But lesser known players like Rake, Whitecat, Vaxe, they do it too to some extent. Now you might say, isn't it just a natural consequence of moving your fingers, like a thumb being attached to your hand is obviously going to move as well? No. As I've said, some players, and that includes me, don't do it. If you look at my thumb here, it stays almost completely still. Like yeah, there's some movement due to my hand moving as a whole, but it's nothing like the thumb wiggling we see in these other players, where it almost looks like they're kind of rotating their hand to stream. And I'm not tensing my hand or I'm deliberately trying to keep my thumb still, it's just how I tap naturally. And yeah, I'm not the only one. Lesser known players like BTMC and Raffis, they don't do it too. It's actually not a lot of players that don't do it, and even with Raffis I'm not 100% certain. It's kind of hard to tell because a lot of players tuck their thumb in or press it against something, and then obviously it's not going to move much. Doesn't mean that they're not a thumb wiggler though. Umbro is a good example of this. And regarding BTMC, his thumb... yeah, we don't talk about that. Yeah, why does it matter? Well, when I first discovered this, I obviously wanted to find out how it might affect gameplay, and so I tried thumb wiggling myself and noticed that I can't. Like, I'm literally unable to authentically move my thumb while streaming. And this is when this whole phenomenon really spiked my attention, you see. People tapping differently was obviously nothing new to me, but being unable...
As far as I know, it's like a way of offloading tension, right?
My first thought was, maybe it has something to do with differences in physiology, and so I did the only sensible thing and started researching the anatomy of the human hand. And turns out there are differences, and dare I say, genetic differences.
Oh shit.
What I stumbled
Genetics.
upon is the longest muscle, a muscle that goes from your elbow into your wrist, and turns out some people just don't have it, including me. Now if you want to test for yourself if you have that muscle, all you gotta do is hold out your hand like this, then touch your pinky and thumb, and then slowly raise your hand. If you have it, it should kind of look like this. As you can see...
I think I have it. Yeah, I have it in both hands. Yeah. There isn't a good way for me to show it on camera. Oh wait, actually? Do you see it? I don't know if you can see it.
For me, there's just nothing there. So to recap, the majority of people are thumb wigglers and the majority of people have this muscle.
Are you seeing where I'm getting at?
Basically, I came up with the hypothesis that the palmaris longus muscle was in some way responsible for thumb wiggling. Now, I realized this is kind of a ridiculous hypothesis to make, given that literally the only thing I was going off was that I don't thumb wiggle and I don't have the muscle, so n equals 1. But I figured I would change that by asking a few players I know about the anatomy of their hand. My initial goal was to literally just find one single person to also not have that muscle and see if they do it, just to have some confidence in knowing if it's worth it to investigate further or not. And I mean, how hard could it be? According to Wikipedia, the amount of people who don't have it is somewhere between 5 and 25%, which is quite the range, but not that rare.
Well, I've asked about 20 players or so, even slid into the DMs of players I've only interacted with like once to schedule a tournament or something, literally just sitting up with the, yo, do you have this muscle? And surprisingly, people weren't asking a lot of questions. Like apparently it's the most normal thing to ask a person that.
I also asked Zudi herself and some other top players, and she, just like everyone else I've asked, has that muscle. This means that in the end, the total amount of people who don't have the muscle came out to 0. Now that was in the middle of 2023 and was the end of my investigation for a while. I felt kind of demotivated. I also didn't know if it was even worth pursuing this further, it just seemed like such a random thing, and so I dropped it. Until the beginning of this year. I uploaded basically my first OST YouTube video and it kind of popped off. It went into a more sciencey direction, which was well received, and so I thought this might make for a good video after all. And so here we are, and I continued my investigation. I started discussing this idea with some members on my Discord server. Brought up that my main struggle with the hypothesis is that I don't have enough data, and so people supported me.
Specifically, huge shout out to Ramos here. He created the Google Form survey for me, so I have an easier time collecting data, and I didn't even ask him to do it. He just
every time he does the green screen pop in, like it makes you feel like he's like
as well that I'm investigating if there's a connection between
European
squashy
boy
probably be a pretty good finding, and so I wanted to keep it a secret. Unfortunately, this meant that I couldn't just ask people, yo, do you have this muscle? Yo, do you thumb wiggle? Instead, I had to get a bit more creative with it, and so I basically asked, yo, do you have this muscle? muscle. Yo, can you maybe send a hand cam video of you streaming? Which, perhaps unsurprisingly, not a lot of people did. Now, what was surprising was that we had Rake reply to the survey.
Oh, shit.
In fact, we even had 2 Rakes reply
Whoa,
to the
wait.
survey. But in all seriousness, the good
Okay.
thing that came out of it is that we finally found people who
Two
don't have the
Rakes.
muscle. In fact, out of 23 respondents, 8 didn't have it, which is almost 35%. On the flip side, none of those sent in any hand cam footage. Well, except Rake, I guess.
Eric, if it's truly you, please comment on another video.
Now, all of the people who did have the muscle...
Wait.
plenty of people sent it.
Wait. Did Emrek send in hand cam footage?
But is that we finally found people who don't have the muscle. In fact, out of 23 respondents, 8 didn't have it, which is almost 35%. On the flip side, none of those sent in any hand cam footage. Well, except Rake, I guess.
Eric,
Wait, so Emrek did send him hand cam footage, and he didn't show it in the video. He kept it a mystery.
if it's truly you,
Okay.
please comment on another video.
Now, out of the people who did have the muscle, plenty of people sent in some hand cam footage, like 8 out of 13, which is over 60%. So, it seems there's a correlation between the existence of the muscle and the willingness to expose your hands, I guess. Now, one of the respondents, notably the 52nd ranked player in the game right now, noted that the research for this is pointless because the muscle is a wrist flexor, to which I would say,
You're not wrong, but did you read the studies?
The
a
studies.
recent study published in 2016 done to explore the impact of the muscle on function in sports states in their introduction, the distal tendon of the PLM shows a lateral slip that attaches to the superficial surface of the abductor pollicis brevis muscle that may contribute to thumb abduction, to which it gives a source to that statement, being from another study called, I'm not going to read that. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the full text, but at the end of the abstract it calls the PLM an important abductor of the thumb.
No, thumb
Abductor.
abduction is this.
Insane.
Now, before you freak out, I don't actually think that thumb abduction plays a role in thumb wiggling. If we take a look again at Zudi's hand cam, we can see that the thumb doesn't seem to be moving by itself all that much, rather it stems from the movement of the hand as a whole. If you don't know what I mean, compare her streaming technique with mine. It seems as if the movement in her fingers is actually coming from her kind of rotating her hand instead of actually tapping with her fingers. And turns out when I asked her about this whole thumb wiggle thing, she herself remarked something very similar about not actually tapping with her fingers. I quote, "My tapping before was very bad.
Whoop
and
Whoop
I
Wolf
realized
also
it was
does
because I
this.
was wiggling my hand left and right instead
That's
of
how he
actually
taps
moving my
streams. He
fingers to
rotates his
stream,
whole
which is why I
wrist.
started to put my thumb on the keyboard to stop it from flailing around. And yeah, we can actually see that in the hand cam of her newer videos. Her thumb is indeed pressing against the keyboard now. Speaking of which,
Oh.
thumb theory. That is the name of a video uploaded by Galactic Light N over 3 years ago. Now, if you don't know who Galactic Light N is, he's one of the fastest speed players out there, if not the fastest speed player. And yeah, that includes faster than Mirami, even without rapid trigger. And on top of that, he might have even been the person to invent Rake tapping. He also has some writings about AR11
Wait,
trigger,
he was the
uploaded
person-
by Galactic Light N indeed pressing against the keyboard now. Speaking of which, thumb theory. That is the name of a video uploaded by Galactic Light N over 3 years ago. Now, if you don't know who
Galactic Lad.
Galactic Light N is, he's one of the fastest speed players out there, if not the fastest speed player. And yeah, that includes faster than Mirami, even without rapid trigger. And on top of that, he might have even been the person to invent Rake tapping. He also has some writings
Interesting.
about AR11 and speed in his also bio.
Wait, when was that?
Might have even been the person to invent Rake tapping. He
When was that
faster than
invented?
Mirami, even without rapid trigger. And on top of that,
Invented.
might have even been the person.
Fuck. September 22nd, 2022. Seven years ago, 2017. $445 BPM. That's basically Rake tapping. I did this in 2017. I invented Rake tapping. That you can't deny that that is essentially what Rake tapping is, right? You can't deny it. You can't deny it. That is essentially Rake tapping. Look. Sure, it's only going in one direction. It's not going back and forth. But it is going across the keycap in the way that the concave keycap is like it's making contact on the two top parts, and do each time it goes across. Isn't that rake tapping? Right here, right now, Jaymusta has invented rake tapping. All right.
To invent rake tapping. He also has some writings about AR11 and speed in his Osubayer. I'm just gonna put this out there if you're interested in that. In my opinion, they're definitely worth a read. Actually, talk with him.
Wait, what?
Osubayer. I'm just gonna put this out.
Starting speed.
To invent rake tapping. He also has some writings about AR11
Writings about AR11
and speed in
and speed.
his Osubayer.
It's a bit of a meme based on Mark Ripto, but it's a simplified breakdown of how to improve at speed for beginners in a broad sense. Ratings. Personal speed guide.
I'm just gonna put this out there. Interested in that. In my opinion, they're definitely worth a read. Actually talked with him about this whole Thumbwiggle thing, and he basically said that he thinks that there are too many factors involved, like wrist height, wrist position, etc., to be able to come to any sort of conclusion based on anatomy. And I would actually agree with that, and also especially when working with a small sample size like I did, it's really hard to control for other factors. Now back to this video. In the description, he goes on to describe how he observed that pressing your thumb against the keyboard while streaming seems to benefit tapping speed and stamina, and that seems to be the very same observation as Judy recently made with her own tapping. Interesting. Let's try it. Okay, so I'm just going to play ISO to 240 BPM 3 times with the thumb tuck and then 3 times without the thumb tuck, and then compare the averages in the end. God, no.
Without. It could be argued that he's doing this for the first time, so he hasn't adjusted his overall technique to work with thumb tuck, whereas he has developed muscle memory without thumb tuck. I should note that these adaptations are probably caused by my technique but not being as good as it could be due to me not being used to tapping that way. Okay, at least he addresses it. However, even so, not a single moment where you felt the thumb tuck could be advantageous for you. I do agree that usually when you try something new, you kind of have a feel for, is this going to help me in the long term? Like, there is sometimes like a way to feel that, like, oh, if I get used to this, I will actually play better. But if he doesn't feel that, could it still help? Sometimes in the past, over like the past 10 years of me playing Osu, in the past, I've like had instances where I would change something in like my setup or how I played, and I wouldn't be sure if it would help me in the long term or if it would like make me play worse outside of the short term. And I would only really find out after playing with the change after like at least 1 or 2 weeks. Only after that point I would be able to say, okay, no, I am actually beginning to feel like I'm playing better, or no, I'm either just playing the same or I'm playing worse. So I think it could be interesting to see him go back and try and commit to this for 2 weeks, or do what Spazza did with switching to ring index and do it for a whole month. I think that would be interesting. Is that necessarily a good way of thinking that changing something to benefit the future? From your own testing of random changes by brute force, it's never ended up being very positive. Well, yeah, of course. Like, if you want to, like, let's say you have, like, indigestion issues, but you love milk. You grew up on milk, but you have digestive problems, like your gastric, like every time you drink milk, it wasn't so much of an issue when you were a kid, but when you became older, like it's like, oh man, like I'm an adult and drinking milk, it's not what it used to be. I feel bloated all the time, fuck man. And then you like go on vacation and you don't have access to milk, and surprisingly you lost some weight instead of gaining weight while on vacation, and you weren't bloated. And then you come back and you're like, oh, milk, I miss you, milk. And then all of a sudden you're bloated and you gain weight and it's like, fuck, man, I feel like, ugh, you know? And it's like, okay, wait. I feel like I don't think I drank milk while I was on vacation. So let's try not drinking milk. And I'll just eat the stuff I usually eat, but I'll stop drinking milk. And if my bloatiness goes away and my discomfort goes away, then I think this could be better for me in the long term, and I might even be lactose intolerant or something. And then you do that, and then like after 1 or 2 weeks, you're like, oh my god, I feel so much better. Wow, I can't believe I can't consume dairy products. That's crazy. Well, now I can actually have a better quality of life in the long term. Like, it's definitely a good thing to try doing.
Seems like it doesn't help me at all. And actually, that makes sense, because I don't Thumbwiggle and am thus not really conserving any energy. While Thumbwigglers, on the other hand, would, because they're restricting unnecessary movement that way.
However, again, this is just a sample size of 1 and mostly speculation, so to be able to make any conclusive statement and confirm this theory, let's gather more data.
Whoa.
Okay, it's almost 3 months later now. I got exactly 4 people sending me some footage of them streaming. 1 video with the thumbtack and 1 without, and then also describing their experiences. Now, I'm aware that 4 people is just not enough to be able to make any conclusive statements based on that.
Yeah.
However, I'm still going to quickly go over the footage just to give like a general overview of what I'm looking for and how I'm analyzing it. Okay, so the first guy, I can instantly spot that he's a Thumbwiggle, even though his thumb is tucked in, because he has that characteristic rotation in his hand, just like we've seen with Zudinator. And he did say that his default way of tapping is actually with the thumb tucked in, but also with the wrist pressed on the desk. He did say that with his finger sticking out, so without the thumb tuck, he actually noticed a decrease in stamina, which does line up with the thumb figure. However, it also seems to be less of an issue for himself if he lifts his wrist into the air. Speaking of which, the next person also seems to be resting their wrist on the desk. I know that at least Spare has talked about how lifting your wrist seems to increase stamina.
Yeah. Spare, Scytho, multiple, like many top players explain, like, agree with that, and have explained it in their own ways.
Either way, him resting his wrist on the desk does make it kind of hard to see if he's a Thumbwiggle or not, because if he is, then this rotation example can be restricted. He did say that tugging his thumb in seems to kind of worsen his tapping. For example, his middle finger was tapping quicker than it normally would. I actually experienced a very similar thing. I think I know the reason for this. Basically, the middle finger is usually longer than the pointer finger, and I guess while tapping, we cannot subconsciously adjust for that. Now, if your thumb is pressed against something, then you're just kind of forced in place, which in turn makes it a lot harder to adjust for that. Add onto that the fact that the middle finger does seem to be the strongest finger overall. I guess it's kind of natural for it to tap more easily. Now, I don't know if more finger strength necessarily means faster tapping, but it's not completely out there. Because of that, I think that an ideal ergonomic keycap would actually have keys at different heights and offsets.
Yeah, people cope with this by tilting their keyboard or keypad.
For tapping with their index and ring fingers instead, because the lengths are a lot more similar. Also turns out their strengths seem to be a lot more similar as well.
Oh.
But yeah, I'm kind of going
Interesting.
here. This is a whole different topic for a whole different video. Oh,
The index finger and ring finger are similar in strength,
by rotating your keyboard.
or at least similar in capacity for strength.
With my fingers, like this row is a little bit higher, and they're perfectly.
Wait, that's actually perfect.
The closest viable keys are kind of far away, so I really need to stretch. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone will try this and find it useful. Who knows? Just imagine this could be the start of the vertical keyboard. Actually, have someone who literally started the footage yesterday, which was
Vertical keyboard meta.
not a Thumbwiggle, and he also didn't notice an increase in stamina or speed from tucking his thumb in, which I guess is expected. I also quickly want to mention his technique. I know his accuracy isn't that great, but look at his fingers while he's streaming. They're barely moving. It's incredibly efficient. Lastly, we got my good friend Felix, who's also not a Thumbwiggle. He said that tucking his thumb in messed with stamina, though it didn't seem to affect his speed. Yeah, overall,
German.
Can't really make any conclusive statements here based on the very small sample size. However, I hope that I could still give you some nice insights into the different styles of tapping or whatever. Well, that was the analysis, but we still don't know why Thumbwiggle exists. And actually, I don't know either. This video is called The Mystery of the Thumbwiggle.
There's something. Well, actually, I'll keep watching.
Because it's a mystery.
He might
I don't
mention
know why
it.
it exists. I didn't call this video Thumbwiggling Explained. I don't know. It's a mystery. But this is not the end of the story. There's a Google form in the description. This time I'm not keeping secrets. I've explained everything you need to know. I'm also going to use this as an opportunity to collect some more data. A lot of it is optional. You don't have to fill it all out, but I think it would definitely be interesting to investigate some more correlations. Like a small scale study almost, which I don't think anyone has ever done before in the OS community. So it's, again, uncharted territory. And lastly, before I end the video, there's one last study I want to talk about, which I'm actually really surprised about that no one in the OS community has talked about before. I have it here in my hand. Basically, they came to the conclusion that the biggest predictor of a successful OS career is being subscribed to my channel.
Oh my fucking god. This guy. Yeah, why not? This guy. That was actually really smart. Holy shit. Yeah, that's a good video. That is a good video. One thing, I'm not sure if you mentioned it. I might have missed it because I was also trying to do the exercises. Is thumb wriggling or pinky wriggling even. Why does it happen? Well, I think it has something to do with how people stick their tongues out while playing Osu. Or they make weird faces while playing Osu. Like they move their jaw backwards or forwards while playing Osu. Why does that happen? That could be its own video, actually. That could be pretty interesting. Like, why do people make weird faces while playing Osu? But I think it's related. And my understanding is that it's related to tension. Tension. You have to offload tension so that you can offload tension from the strain of staying focused and in the zone so that you have the least mechanical resistance while playing. Because if you tense your fingers directly, well, you're going to injure yourself and you're also going to be super slow. So, yeah.